Thank you so much. It means a lot to me. Such a sweet introduction. It's been a while, sune hue. In fact, it also almost gave up I gave up my age because you said 2015 mein main aa gaya tha Nisha uski cousins mein. So thank you so much. I'm very excited. Firstly, I'd like to say I'm the happiest when I'm surrounded by the youth of not only, we keep saying that, first we are in our mohalla, then we are in our city, then in our country, and eventually we are global citizens. And it is we, the youth of this country and the youth of where we are from, is going to make the future of this world, not only a country, right? So, since I'm here and since I'm surrounded by all of you, my number one motive of coming here today is, the first thing to speak about the silver screen to sweet success. Since I was 6 years old, my father, unknowingly, I don't think he was cultivating it, in the month of Ramadan, he used to call me. I was 6 years old, and he said, "Beta, ek kaam karte hai. It's Ramadan. It's a month of service. You have to feed everybody." So 6 saal ki umar mein I would go to my father's shop, which you now know as Shabbir's Tawakkal. That time it was a hole in the wall, a small joint, and I'd be like, "Dad, why are you making me do this?" You know how it at 6, man, it's child labor, right? But I was going there. I used to go there in the night, and for 1 hour, I would sit with my father, and I would see how he did business. I would see how he would sell things, how he was making people happy, and how business is done. It started to unknowingly filter through my system all over the years, from 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They were not chosen because this one's my child, so I'll give it. Nothing's wrong with that, but it is not a formula. The point is, whoever is deserving should carry forward the legacy. या तो फिर दुकान बंद हो जाती है. So I want to now take you through the 5 points which will establish my experience, and I've called it vegan because today being vegan is in fashion, right? VEGAN. I'm not saying you should become vegan as per the food choices, but V stands for vision. Everybody must be talking about vision, right? People will be like, "Beta, vision hona chahiye. Your life has to have vision." But you're like, yeah, everybody has vision, and there's nothing right vision, wrong vision. From a chai wala to the Jeff Bezos of the world, everybody has vision. Vision alone can't do anything, but it's a primary fact to have, because most people who don't make it as entrepreneurs lack vision. So it's a very important thing. And for me, if I didn't have it, I would not even forget about building my own legacy. I would have not taken my father's legacy too far. My vision, I'm going to tell you I'll give you a couplet into the story also, so that I can explain to you better. When I was a young boy, when I was about 10 or 11 years old, there's a place called Muhammad Ali Road, right? Where there are these big brands of mithai and food, and people go there, and everybody in Ramadan, basically Ramadan is a big festival in India, especially in South Bombay, where people come all the way from different cities to eat and binge food. And I always told my father, I said, "Dad, why are people going to Muhammad Ali Road? The food is not great. It's dirty. It's not hygienic. Why are people going there? We have great food. Our place is way cleaner. We are a far gourmet brand." My father said, "Beta, that's okay. There'll come a time. You work hard, and why don't you make it happen?" That vision got stuck in my head, and I said, "Dude, I will. I promised you, Dad. There'll come a point when I will." So my vision for Shabbir's Tawakkal started at that young age. Again, I didn't know I'm going to become an entrepreneur, but it was a conversation with a father. My father was a visionary himself, and he gave the baton to me at a very young age, me not realizing, and I'm sure he didn't realize it too, but he gave me permission to go after my vision. And this is the vision only with Shabbir's Tawakkal. I have a vision in cinema, now I have other vision which I'll come to now. So now I was done. I was completely soaked with my vision. As I was growing up, I had a vision in Shabbir's Tawakkal, then I had a vision in cinema. Nothing deterred my vision in cinema, because that was always my number one love whilst I was growing up. Having said that, legacy and what my father did always intrigued me. That comes to point number 2, with the vegan V is done. E stands for exposure. Everything in life, unfortunately, is relative. You are never going to have the same exposure as me. Is it possible? It's not. Your exposure and my exposure, even if you're living the same day, even if you're sitting right next to me, the way you look at something and the way I look at something will never be the same. We are never going to have the same exposure ever. but it is a fundamental thing to have and acquire for you to be an entrepreneur. If you don't have exposure, if you don't have knowledge, if you don't acquire and absorb things in life, you will never be a successful entrepreneur. This is according to me, because I've seen, and I would obviously love to give you examples also. If you study companies that have risen and fallen over the years, if you study actors, if you study mass media conglomerates that have gone up and down, has a lot to do with exposure. Because when after a point people get complacent, and exposure is not to do with your childhood only. You might feel, "Arey yaar, these big guys." I come from a very modest background. So in my life, I never said, "Arey yaar, I'm so unfortunate. Those my friends have a Mercedes car and they live in Malabar Hill. I wish I had it." In my head, I was like, "I want that car, man." So that to me is very important. The exposure and then the mindset, where you expose yourself to everything. You wanna expose yourself to travel, you wanna expose yourself to reading, you wanna expose yourself to people. To me, the best exposure in life is to people. Which brings me to the G of vegan, which is the shattering of the glass roof. We all have, whether you believe it or not, it's scientifically proven, it's a psychological fact, that we have a glass roof above us. There is a limitation that you think you have. You might feel, maybe I'm making a certain amount of money, I'm very happy. You see somebody, your cousin, or in your own family, maybe your father, your mother, we all are used to people saying, though I'm having 2 vacations, is very good, very happy. Most people are happy and satisfied, which is great. I'm very envious of them. I think that's also a very great thing to have. But they build a glass roof where their possibilities are infinite. It's infinite possibilities which you're just covering with a glass roof. Why don't we shatter that? Why do we limit ourselves? I have in my life met people who I can't believe have done things that they have. Like and I have the great privilege, because of what I do, because of my acting and my filmmaking career, and because of my father's business. I've met the greatest people, 3 of whom I'd love to name here. Shah Rukh Khan, there's a gentleman called Balakrishna Doshi who adopted us like his grandchildren, and Nikhil Gandhi. These 3 people are the best minds I've ever worked. And with them I got so inspired, and these are my current heroes. These are 3 people I've met later on in life. It is life-changing for you to realize, the day you realize that you have a glass ceiling on top, you will change the game. I will give you examples of my own self when I tell you my story. But again, to give you a small example, whilst I was growing up, whilst I was doing one thing, I was constantly being told, "Beta, you be the master of one. Beta, you be master of one." And somebody told me, "Beta, you be a jack of all trades." But that's not as good as being master in one. It has been ingrained in our systems to be done in what is a set routine. It's not like a wheel. A wheel is invented. We can't mess with that. That's fair. But you cannot ingrain somebody else's system into our system. We are all unique algorithms. So to me, the best thing I learned about the glass ceiling is that I am limiting myself. And whilst I was growing up, I was told I can only be a director, or I can only be an actor, or I can only be a writer, or I cannot have a dental startup. To which I said, why can't I? There are 24 hours in a day, right? I read something very interesting that Elon Musk said. He said, if you decide that you're going to clean your room in 5 days, it'll take you 5 days to clean your room. If you decide to clean your room in 2 hours, you'll do it in 2 hours. I found that very, very intriguing and fascinating. Because if you put your mind to it, if you use your 24 hours well, you will crash through the glass ceiling and you'll achieve things that you can't even imagine. Which brings me to the E again of the A of vegan, which is a hero. And the reason why I say a hero, because it's not going to be one. It's not the hero. It's a hero. This is the greatest reason of me being where I am today. When I was a kid, your father is your hero, your mother is a hero. You don't have any other exposure. So it starts with them. Because then till you're about 5 or 6 years of age, you're always like, oh, daddy does whatever is correct, mommy does whatever is correct. Then you start getting exposed to the outer world. Right? Now you start to combine all the 4 which I've said, which is vision, exposure, shattering the glass ceiling, and now I'm talking about a hero. My greatest success, I give to this. Because since I was a child, I kept changing my hero. I kept becoming them, then I kept looking for a new one. Which is why it's not the hero, It is a hero. That hero needs to keep changing. And as I'm growing older, now that I've hit I'm in my early 30s, and in the 30s it's getting harder to find those heroes. When I was younger, it was much easier. I was like, "Arey ye kamal hai, yaar ye kamal hai," and I kept becoming these people. Now I'm like, "Yaar, abhi kisko dhoondu?" So now it's getting harder for me, and to keep looking for the heroes has become a task. Earlier it was easier because I come from a modest background, right? I didn't have the exposure. So you have to create that exposure to meet these people and to make them your heroes, and to have a mentor, whoever, even if it's not a mentor, look at them and become them. So that has been a huge factor. This to me has to be applied if you want to be an entrepreneur. Because if you want to be an entrepreneur without being a mentor, you might make it. But there are chances, there's a 1% chance you might not, because having a mentor and a hero is extremely important in an entrepreneur's life. Coming to the last part about being vegan, which is again a huge part of who I am today, is negating mediocrity. I think many lives are destroyed, student lives, especially the youth, and I say this to the youth more often because we get extremely trapped in being mediocre. To understand what mediocre is, you need to understand how the entrepreneur works. You have to have a hero. You need to have a mentor. You need to have those 5 people in your life who you blindly follow. You need to understand that and I'm a filmmaker, and it'll be really wrong for me to say this, sometimes I'm guilty of it too. You're stressed and you just see 2 shows back to back, and you realize, oh my God, 3 days have passed, I've done nothing. Nothing's wrong with that if you're doing once in a while. It's okay to watch a couple of shows here and there, a couple of episodes here and there, but people who do anything that is addictive, anything that is for short-term pleasure, is always going to be detrimental for you. Giving into short-term pleasure will make you a slave to an entrepreneur. That is very, very important. And you need to understand this, which is why I talk about the youth, because there's a reason why we have this population. There's a reason why we are where we are as a country. There's so much that we can explore because we are going to be the future. We are one of the youngest countries in the world. We have maximum amount of potential. We've had the biggest brain drain, but because of the immense encouragement that we're getting in terms of education and infrastructure, you guys are going to have the time of your life. You have to squeeze mediocrity out of you. You have to negate it. And it's not only you, anybody. Till today, even now, after whatever little work I've done in my life, I keep thinking, yeah, am I doing? Sometimes you're scared to go to a particular area. So I tell them, it's really fun. You come. Now, because I'm there, they trust me. And they come there. Now, for the world, they've become celebrities. So it becomes like a thing. I realized, coming back to negating mediocrity, I was chilling. I was in another headspace. But because he told me, he said, bro, this year, how come none of he said celebrities. So I realized that, one second, a huge part of the branding in Ramadan has become my friends who are celebrities who come there. So immediately, it's not like I did it because of this, but I realized I have become complacent. Because till then, I have not called any of my friends. Forget about the marketing or whatever, that is secondary. But I realized I have become mediocre because every year I feed my friends. Why am I not feeding them this year? What is different? That pushed me, and I said, wait a minute. I immediately, that night after Sehri, for 2 hours I invited a whole set of my friends. I said, Ajao. And rest, as they say, is history. This year has been insane. It's been 2 hours waiting. I'm sorry, Parth Samtan, you waited for 1.5. I love you. He's a brother of mine, a great actor. Sorry. And yeah, so again, it can be something as small as that, but you need to realize that you're getting mediocre. You can be mediocre every day. Like you have to be constantly, all these, when you're being vegan, not the food, my vegan, you have to constantly work on these 5 things every day. Whether it is your vision, whether who you're getting exposed to and what you're getting exposed to, which glass ceiling you're breaking, which hero you're making, and which hero you already become. Sometimes you become the hero. Find the next one. Keep becoming, and at the end, and why I say mediocre, the reason why I spoke about negating mediocrity last is because when you finish everything, think, after doing all this, am I still mediocre? And that will help you then to set base. My great-grandfather came from Jamnagar, and he had a shoe shop. One day, one of our high priests was walking through Bhindi Bazaar and said, "You should stop the shoe store and you should start a sweet shop." And he was like, "But we don't know how to make sweets, man." But again, the man was a visionary. He said, "Okay." So my grandfather, that's Abdullah Mithaiwala, Ismail ji was his father. Abdullah Mithaiwala put there's a ready, we call it, outside on the road. On the road you make, like if you ever come to the restaurant now, you'll see it's still, we try to keep that tradition. It's outside, while where one ustad is making the malpua over there. So my grandfather in a lungi and a banyan, sweating away, he used to make the jalebi, the malpua, and there was dahi vada. These three things used to be the only three things. And then my father, because my grandmother had polio, so my father was studying in Pune. So my grandfather worked very hard alone. He toiled. He did whatever he could. Again, a visionary man. Very tough to go from shoes suddenly to sweets, but he managed it. Now comes standard 10 when Shabbir Mithaiwala, that's my father, he got a call from his father. He said, "Beta, how is education going?" He said, "Dad, it's fantastic." He said, "Okay." And he said, "Dad, I want to study more." He said, "Great, but do you know what is 2 plus 2? So my dad said, "Yeah, it's 4. He said, "Great, your education is complete, son, come." So my dad stopped his education. Grandfather stopped my father's education, called him on the radio. So then my grandfather and my father together were making malpuas. My father was if you ever go to Bhindi Bazaar in that square and you ask anybody, he was a walking, talking love machine. Like anybody who came in touch, it said if you meet Shabbir Mithaiwala, you're in love with him, right? So it's like it's a beautiful, beautiful feeling. I hope we inherit 1% of that. And he was always with him. I also learned a very important thing of being to have the feeling of inadequacy. It's another one of my favorite feelings. You feel inadequate so that you keep moving more. So in that, my father taught me that in many ways, that you got to keep growing. And he didn't do it intentionally. He just did it. And he then grew the business from a ready, ek dukaan, there was then one shop, and there was 2 shops, and there were 3 shops, and it became a slightly bigger shop, but it still remained a simple sweet shop. He instilled values in my brother and me. So I don't run the business. It's my brother Moyed Mithaiwala who runs the business. I am the guy who, I always say, he runs it and I'm trying to elevate it, right? He runs, I'm giving him the ramp. That's how, and I always believe that in Hindi it said, दो तलवारों को कभी भी एक म्यान में नहीं रहना चाहिए. 2 brothers in a business should always do different things. So coming back to my father, so my father made what Shabbir's Tawakkal is today. He obviously had his brothers who he took care of like his children. Now they're separate entities. So my father then raised. He really wished that I got into the business. He could see that ये थोड़ा बड़ा होके कुछ करेगा लड़का. He saw potential in me. So I remember it was grade 7 or grade 8. He said, "Beta, you do the business." I said, "Dad, don't take me here because if you hire me, I'll throw you and your brothers out of this shop in 2 days." So he's like, "Oh, what nonsense." I'm like, "Yeah, but this is not how we run business, man." So I was always very my acumen was also strong. And also especially to all the fathers and sons, I lost my father 7 years ago. But you always feel this, father and sons are always having this friction, and I love the man because also I used to be jealous of my father. He was the most well-known Bora. It is said that any man who died before, any Bora who died had to have my father's sweets. So it was a very big thing for me. Wherever I went, it said, "Shabbir bhai ka beta ja raha hai." Arre dekh kar rahe ho, Shabbir bhai ka beta hai. Masjid mein ja raha hai, if I had to go for some wires or something, it's like, if I didn't have a pass, it's like, "Oh, no, he's Shabbir bhai's son, take him in. With me, it irritated me. I was like, why am I getting this special treatment because of him? So my dream and my ambition and my entrepreneurial mindset was saying, one day, people should know him as my father. And my quest to become actually an actor and in cinema, etc., has a lot to do with that. That I was competing with my own father. And he always raised us to have that entrepreneurial mindset, in a healthy competitive mindset. And then, after I graduated, I'll also be a little quick about this. I graduated and I finished studying, and I promised my father I'll come to business. He told me, he said, "Beta, chal, now come sit on the shop." I said, "But why?" He said, "But you promised that you'll sit on the shop." I said, "I promised you. I told you I will, but I never told you when." So I said, I will come back, Dad, when my time is right. Let me get into cinema, let me make my legacy, and I will contribute a lot more. And like I've given you some instances of all these years, I worked very hard in cinema. It's been, I don't know where my 20s went. I became a director, I became a producer, I've become an actor. And all these people, all this knowledge I've amassed, now I apply it to this, which is how today's subject, from silver screen to sweet success. I would like to dedicate today's talk to my father, Shabbir, who's also known as the man who sold sweetness. And there's nothing greater, and it's been an honor to speak to you, the youth of tomorrow. Most importantly, my last message before I go is that just spread the message of love. There's nothing bigger than that. Love you. Thank you.